Cain Velasquez is the former two-time UFC heavyweight champion of the world. He's a collegiate wrestling champion, former pro wrestler, and most importantly to this story, he is a father. In 2022, his young son, and by extension his family, were the alleged victims of a horrendous crime, a crime which compelled Cain to take the law into his own hands. A shooting took place which Cain perpetrated. He was arrested for the shooting, pled no contest to the charges against him, and earlier this week, the sentencing based on those charges was handed down. And a lot of people are very upset and passionately vocal about feeling like justice was not served in this case as far as Cain is concerned. So I'm going to go into a little bit of the backstory regarding the incident, go into what the sentencing entailed. We'll watch a little bit of a video, and then I will provide some supplemental information thereafter. Starting this off, this is from 2022, immediately following Cain's arrest for the incident. This is from CBS Sports. Cain Velasquez faces attempted murder charge after allegedly shooting at suspected child abuser. Former UFC heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez is facing multiple charges, including attempted murder, following an incident in San Jose, California on Monday. Velasquez was arrested and charged on Monday after allegedly shooting at another person who is being charged with molesting a relative of Velasquez's. The person hit by the bullets was the stepfather of the accused and is expected to survive his injuries, according to police. Velasquez, 39, fired a handgun multiple times into a truck carrying Harry Gallardi and two older relatives and rammed the truck with his truck, Santa Clarita County District Attorney Jeff Rosen said in a release. Gallardi's male relative, 63, was struck once, but is expected to survive. The sad tragedy is that Mr. Velasquez chose to take the law into his own hands, endangering the public and everyone in the truck. This act of violence also causes more pain and suffering to his family. So this is part of the narrative surrounding this case that a lot of people are upset about, and I think is one of the framings of this case that bothers the majority of people who know about it, is that the law and the legal side of the case is making Cain out to be the bigger villain because of the actions that he took, trying to get revenge on this person who perpetrated this crime against his son, when in a lot of people's minds, it should be the emphasis placed on Harry Gallardi, the person who committed the initial crime in the first place. I think that that resonates with a lot of people as something that is askew from the legal perspective. Yes, what Cain did was wrong, but what Gallardi did was potentially leagues wronger to a lot of people. Leaps and bounds more wrong. So this is put into a little bit more context with this following portion. Gallardi is facing felony child molestation charges. He was granted release from custody without bail with restrictions, according to the district attorney. Velasquez is being held without bail at the Santa Clarita County Jail and set for arraignment on Wednesday. So before the shooting took place, before the high-speed car chase that apparently was part of it, that Cain was involved in, following these people in this truck, Gallardi, facing felony child molestation charges, was granted release without bail with restrictions. So I'm sure that those restrictions are probably things like travel restrictions. You know, he has to stay within a certain amount of miles from his home or from the jail or whatever destination, whatever location they've decided for that. And probably, I would assume, no contact with minors in that time. But he was still released without bail. So I don't know if there were any kind of monetary obligations he had to meet as part of these restrictions, but the fact that he was released at all is probably a piece that a lot of people are upset about, and I'm sure that Cain was obviously upset about. On the flip side, Cain was held without bail. Of course, it was an attempted murder charge, so I guess that makes sense, but obviously this case has a lot of nuance to it. So that's the basic gist of what happened as far as the incident. Cain's son is abused by this Harry Gallardi person. He's released from jail essentially free to roam the streets, except for whatever restrictions were placed on him by the court. But of course, people can do a lot of different things under those circumstances as a freely roaming individual. Cain follows this person in a truck, rams the truck with his truck, shoots a number of shots into the truck. The person is not struck, but the person's stepfather is struck. Next, we're going to watch this video that the Weasel put together going over some of the details of this case. Shout out to the Weasel, obviously a big channel in the MMA space. This is a shorter video for him, but it has a lot of the information regarding the sentencing and then some surrounding information about the incident itself that puts everything into a little bit more context. So I'm going to let this play and I'll pause it when needed.
So I think we have all the details now about the conclusion of Cain Velasquez's case. It's good to wait on these things for all the details to come out first, because there are some details that haven't been reported recently regarding Cain Velasquez's case, where he's had a retroactive 5-year sentence after he pled no contest to felony attempted murder and assault and weapon charges. So Cain has already served 3 years of that sentence. He spent 1 year in jail, 2 years in house arrest. He has another 541 days left, which is about a year and a half. He could also have early leave based on good behavior. So Cain Velasquez could be freed even earlier than that.
Okay, so Cain serves a portion of his 5-year sentence. 5 years is the sentence that was handed down by the judge in this case. He has this remaining portion that is just under 2 years, a year and a half or so, and he is potentially going to be eligible for release earlier than that. So that being as it is, the alternative, or at least what the district attorney was looking for, was 30 years. So Cain could have been facing a 30-year jail sentence over this. He ended up getting 5. He served a large portion of his time already waiting for the trial and has a year and a half or so before he would be freed, not counting good behavior and early release and things like that.
All while Harry Goulart, the accused man of molesting his then 4-year-old son, and it's allegedly over 100 times, at a daycare facility which was owned by Harry Goulart's mother, is still free and is yet to have gone to court, while Cain's case has concluded and he's locked up in jail.
Yes, this is another element of this case that is a little absurd. So Cain goes out and tries to get justice where he was not seeing justice, and is tried and sentenced before this other person is even put on trial. This person who perpetrated one of the most horrendous crimes that society has. That's a point that I think a lot of people are very upset by. I think that that makes a lot of sense to be upset by that, and it shows an inadequacy in our legal system if this is the case. Why is Cain being moved through the system so quickly when this other person who arguably committed the worst offense is still out? As far as I know, he's still out walking the streets. I mean, if he was granted release without bail, the shooting against him doesn't change that. So he's ostensibly a free man currently awaiting trial for felony molestation charges. That would suggest an imbalance in the scales of justice.
An absolute nightmare for any parent. Cain Velasquez is in jail while that man is walking. For now, he is going to have his court date, and we'll see his sentence from there. I don't know why he's taking them so long. I don't know why they let him free in the first place. Not only that, they tried to imprison Cain for 30 years to life.
So yeah, I mean, this is what I was just saying there, that they let him free in the first place, I think is the first problem of all of this. That could have solved essentially everything. Had this person not been granted release, how is a person even granted release based on the crimes that he committed? Like, isn't that one that should be like a no bail situation? Held without bail? I would think that that would warrant something like that for the type of crime that it was. He could go out and do the same to other children while he's awaiting trial, depending on how sick of a person he is. Also, conversely, on the other side of it, had he not been released, Cain would not have had access to him to do what he did. And understandably, a lot of people have been saying, including Brendan Moreno, who made a statement about this, this is what 99.9% of parents would do, or at least feel compelled to do, were they so inclined, had the stones to do it. and the wherewithal. So a nightmare situation for Cain and his family, only compounded by the extenuating factors of what Cain did. Of course, it's not right what he did, and he himself acknowledges that. But this could have all been avoided had this person not been granted essentially unrestricted release. They're saying it's with restrictions. I don't buy that whatever restrictions were placed on him were as substantial as it would have been if he did not get bail in the first place.
Thankfully, Cain is a good lawyer. But for anybody that doesn't know the story, so this is basically how the story went.
All right. So, I mean, just before we get into the story, as Weasel's going to tell it, I kind of gave an overview of it. But the fact that he had to say that there, thankfully, Cain had a good lawyer. We're all in this situation as fans, and Cain's family and Cain all very lucky that Cain did have a good lawyer and had the means to afford one. The fact that there is a legal system in this country where the amount of money that you spend on your lawyer determines how your case is navigated is already a problem to me. Because the facts of the case should be as they are and presented as such and decided as such. Like, obviously there is a lot of nuance to every case. Really, it's very, very rare that you have such a completely cut and dry case that there's not some room for nuance. But it's just amazing to me that you can essentially buy your way out of jail if you are that rich. And if you're poor, it's essentially a sentence regardless of the truth of the case. If you can't afford a good lawyer, it's just as good to represent yourself because you have no chance. Of course, any man who represents himself has a fool for a client. That notwithstanding, having a bad lawyer or your court-appointed lawyer, that's one of your rights in this country, in the United States, that you get a lawyer appointed to you. If you cannot afford one, that you might as well not have a lawyer in that instance. So, in this case, thankfully, yeah, Cain did have a good lawyer, and he was able to get the deal that he ended up getting. Perhaps an even better lawyer could have gotten him time served. No jail time whatsoever. Who knows? But this case, in many ways, showcasing a lot of the flaws of our legal system, I'd say that in and of itself is one of them.
Cain Velasquez heard of this, that Harry Goulart was free. Velasquez took matters into his own hands as he believed the system has failed his family, and chased Harry Goulart for 11 miles on the afternoon of February 28, 2022. Harry Goulart was not driving, it was his stepfather, so Cain started shooting at the intersection. I don't know how many cars were on the road, I don't know if there was people walking on the sidewalks. It's at an intersection. Usually intersections have multiple cars, it's busier.
So this is an interesting element of this, and I actually did a little bit of research here. So they're saying that this was an 11-mile chase, and it concluded at an intersection. I looked up the school that was mentioned here as, they're saying that he fired shots at an intersection that was close to a school, close to the time that school was letting out. Now, the school is here, and as you can see, this is a pretty secluded area. I mean, granted, Google Street View is taken at any time, so this could, generally be a very trafficked area. But what I'm saying is that you don't have a lot of businesses on the backside here, and there are train tracks here. So the road in front of this school is essentially just the cars that are going to be on it and the few businesses and things that are going to be on the other side, aside from the cars going the opposite direction. Now, if we go out to the expanded view here a little bit that you can see at the bottom, the only intersection that I'm seeing that's close to the school, unless they're counting things like this intersection, which I guess doesn't look like, I mean, this whole area does not appear to be very heavily dense in population. Like, there's not a lot going on in this area. The only other intersection that's even really close to this is the highway on off over here. So I'm saying all of this to say that they're talking about how he put a lot of lives in danger. And of course, he definitely did, regardless of how many people it was. If there's one person that's around a shooting, it's going to be endangering innocent lives, just by nature of how shootings operate, right? But you'll hear here in a little bit that the district attorney, one of the district attorneys, somebody else involved in in this case, is like alleging, how many people, what a danger to the public Cain was in this case. And I think it's a little overblown based on just seeing that area. But again, it doesn't change anything. It's just an interesting point, and really kind of illustrating what I was saying earlier about how I feel like the legal side of this case is putting a lot more emphasis on how terrible it was what Cain Velasquez did, while not acknowledging how terrible the perpetrator of the initial crime's actions were. They're not putting it into context. It's very black and white, the way that they're viewing this case as far as Cain is concerned. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in a bit, but from everything that I have seen and in my time with this sport, I have never heard a negative thing ever said about Cain Velasquez. He's always had a very good reputation amongst fighters as far as I know. He's certainly not a person who has had any other incidents of major note that I've ever heard about. And I heard him on a podcast recently talking about many things, including this sentencing that he was going to be receiving and received recently. And he seems like a very well-spoken, very kind person, a kind-hearted individual who loves his family and loves his children. So this is not some monster that we're talking about here. It's not even a bad dude that we're talking about here, not like an asshole. Like, Cain's a good guy who reacted in a way that I think a lot of people can empathize with based on what happened. But there's no acknowledgement of that from the legal side of things, and I think that that's troubling to a lot of people.
We do know at some point there was a school with students leaving with their parents and teachers outside, somewhere around the chase, as Cain was shooting. Cain is shooting at this truck. He doesn't know who's in the truck besides his target, so it's most likely like a tunnel vision moment for him. And the chase continued. Cain rammed his own car into Harry Goulart's and then started shooting at it again. Missed his target and hit the stepfather in the arm and torso. Now, according to an assistant district attorney of Santa Clara County, which is the area of which this all happened, this hasn't been reported really anywhere except the official site. Apparently, the sprayed bullets were also near a school crowded with children, teachers, and parents. This is what it says, according to Angela Bernhard, assistant district attorney. Quote, Cain Velasquez was sentenced to 5 years in prison today by the Honorable Arthur Bocanegra for a vigilante shooting spree that wounded an unintended target and sprayed bullets near a school crowded with children, teachers, and parents. He was remanded into custody.
So yeah, that's what I was getting at when I showed the map here. We can go back to the school itself. Define near, because if it was at an intersection, this is the school that they're talking about. Go back to the little expanded map. This is a highway on-off. This is the highway. This does not intersect here. There's an on-off there. The only other intersection that I can see here is this one here. That's like a service road. Dead ends over there. A little bit farther back. Dead ends in two directions. And then these intersections down here. But I mean, we're talking a great distance. I don't know exactly what the distance that, how this map is showing or calculating distance, but if the school is here, this is not really an intersection, but I guess maybe can technically be considered one. I mean, it just doesn't seem to me like you can frame it as him doing this near a school. Like, they're making it sound like he was like right in this field, or, like over here, like in the field area, like that the shooting happened here, the school is over here, and it's getting out. I don't know exactly where the shooting took place. I'm just saying that if it took place at an intersection and this is the school, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that it took place near the school. doesn't change the circumstances. If kids are getting out of school, if anyone is around, kids or otherwise, you're putting the public in danger. I'm just saying it's a little bit disingenuous the way that they're framing it.
During the high-speed chase on crowded streets in 2022, the former UFC fighter fired a handgun multiple times at a truck carrying 3 people, including a man accused of molesting Velasquez's relative. And it goes through like the whole thing. So you could already think like shooting in public at an intersection from a moving vehicle is very dangerous to the public. At that point, you're not just putting your target at risk, you're putting innocent people at risk too. And
right. You're putting a lot of innocent people at risk. You're putting the target at risk, of course. You're putting all of the people in the other car at risk. And you're also putting yourself at risk, honestly, because if you are shooting in a crowded place, there could be other people with weapons not knowing the circumstances and taking the law into their own hands. Being the quote-unquote good guy with a gun could have turned out really bad for Cain in this situation. So violence begets more violence often, and there were a lot of people endangered by what Cain did. And no one's disputing that aspect of it. It's the surrounding circumstances that have people feeling the way that they feel.
And the fact that it was near a school, crowded with children, teachers, and parents, it was reported to be in the afternoon. That's usually when the students are leaving school. Bro, I understand Cain's rage. I understand his motive. Get the guy by yourself, you know. There's a whole different way he could have done that, you know. He didn't need to shoot in public like that, especially near a school. He had no idea where Cain most likely did not understand his surroundings, right? He was tunnel vision on one man. God forbid. Could you imagine he shot someone completely innocent? And I think that's what he's thinking about. Like, he understands the recklessness of what he did, and he talked about it as well.
Yeah, of course. Cain was not thinking or seeing straight with all of this. You know, he admits all of that. I think that it's very lucky in general that no one was killed in this situation. Even the person who probably deserved it. You know, whether or not you think that it should have been by the hand of Cain Velasquez or by the legal system's hand, or maybe you don't think that it's a capital offense to do what this person did to a child, but I would think that a lot of people do. But it does not fall on Cain to make that assessment. We have a legal system in place, theoretically, for the adherence to law and order, but if it doesn't work, then that does lead to situations like this, and it certainly pisses off a lot of the people who view these matters as public citizens ourselves. I'm glad no one got killed for Cain's sake.
Went on Kyle Kingsbury's podcast and talked about how what he did was wrong. He shouldn't have done it that way. He's taking accountability and he's trying to move forward from it, which is strong for Cain because it's very hard to look at it like that. This is what Cain Velasquez says, quote, "From what I can say as far as myself, the way that I handled things was not the way to do it. We cannot put the law in our own hands. And I know what I did was very dangerous to other people, you know? Not just people involved, but innocent people. I understand what I did and I'm willing to do everything I have to pay that back," unquote.
I wanted to read a little bit more of what Cain said. So that's one of the pieces that he said on Kingsbury's podcast. I listened to the whole episode, and he said a good amount of other things on there, and I wanted to read a couple of those as well. "What I did was not correct. I understand that. I paid, and I'll pay whatever else as far as what I have to do to pay all of that back. I don't think I can pay it back, but I can always learn from my mistakes and help others. It's just information that you never know anybody. Trust your kids. Have that open communication with your kids. When you do go to the bathroom with them when they're very young, you can work your way in there as far as talking to them about what's appropriate and what's not, so they know to tell you, and they can always tell you whenever something is not correct. So as far as that goes, it's basically that the more we get consciously aware of ourselves, the more that light shines on dark things, especially things like that. I think that that is extremely astute. And sadly, in this world, it is necessary to have those conversations with your kids very young. And the way that Cain is approaching his accountability when it comes to this matter is very admirable. He did not deny the charges. He's facing them head on. He is going to continue to face the repercussions head on. He is, by all accounts, as far as I have seen, an extremely stand-up individual. And that hurts even more. There's one other piece here that I did want to read. It's this part here. It's towards the end of the podcast. He says, "Everything is divinely orchestrated, and my kids are amazing. My son is amazing. He's one of the strongest, funniest kids that I know. He's my best friend. I'm proud of him for who he is. This will not define him. He's meant for greater, and my daughter as well. They were both made for great things, and I'm just like, I'm so blessed to live this life with you. You help me, I help you. It's not like I'm teaching you, you're teaching me as well. I'm just fucking loving that I get to be with you at this moment. This is sacred, the most sacred, to be with another version of yourself. Just to relive your own childhood and do better. I love that I get to see the excitement that I had as a child. Now I get to see it through their eyes. I just sit and observe like, yeah, that's what it is." So I wanted to read that specifically because when you hear Cain say that on the show, you can tell the heart that this person has and the heart that he has for his family and the genuine nature of the man that's saying those things. I really thought it was fantastic wording to say that this incident will not define his son and that his children are bound for great things in life and that he wants to be there with his children. That's another portion of this whole situation that's so upsetting, is the fact that now he's going to be separated from his children, even if it is for a somewhat short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. Your kids only grow up once. There's only so much time that you have with them as young adolescents, as young children. And any time away from them is extremely hard for parents, I'm sure. So for it to have been because Cain was doing what he felt right because of a legal system that failed him, that's hurtful. And that's, I think, something that's bothering a lot of people.
But that's not to overlook Harry Goulart. How does this man not have a court case yet? He was freed over 5 years ago, by the way. Cain's case is concluded. That man is still walking without even going to court in over 5 years. That's the cause of all of this stuff. How is that not being solved first in court?
That I actually didn't know until this video. I had thought that the incident, as far as the actual abuse goes, I thought that had taken place somewhat recent to when Cain did what he did. But apparently, the actual abuse was perpetrated years before. So I guess Cain figured out where this guy was going to be or somehow got wind of it and went after him sometime later on. Regardless of that aspect of it, the fact of the matter, if that is the truth, that this person was charged with these things 5 years ago and has not had to face justice for them, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Cain does what he did, is arrested, tried, convicted, and sentenced, and this person still has not even gone to court. Where is justice? You want to talk about Cain Velasquez being a vigilante? Well, if the legal system doesn't work, what options do people have? And I'm not advocating for anybody to go out and take the law into their own hands. I just wish that we had a system in this country that actually served the people that deserve it serving. And how many times has the legal system failed even in that regard at the ground level? How many times have we had police shoot innocent people and have no repercussions? People who are above the law because they are the law, getting crimes wiped off the books and things like that. We have a broken system in the United States. Cain acted impulsively, but to a lot of people, it was coming from the right place. Obviously, from Cain, it was coming from the right place. You hear how he was talking about the love that he has for his children. So I think it's very callous of the legal representatives here, as far as the district attorney goes, making Cain out to be this big of a villain. I think that you should put it all into context.
I mean, his court date is June 2nd. They moved on Cain Velasquez's case very quickly. Why is it taking us so long to move with Goulart's? I don't know if it's a California thing. I know there's a lot of talks about, California's justice system is just all whacked out. People are saying that he might get a lesser sentence than Cain Velasquez. That would be an absolute travesty.
That would be ridiculously tragic. That would be a travesty, is absolutely correct. If this person gets a lesser amount of jail time than Cain Velasquez gets, based on the fact that that person committed over 100 acts of abuse on a child, where is justice? I ask. Where is justice?
A man who went to defend his own son is locked up and has the potential to serve a longer sentence. That is absolutely insane if that's how it turns out. We thought they were going to throw the book at Cain. They were trying to get him 30 years to life. And Cain's attorney talked about it. Renee M. Hessling said this, quote, "Today's results are bittersweet. We had hoped Mr. Velasquez would remain out of jail. However, the facts remain clear. Cain Velasquez is a good man, a devoted father, and a respected member of the community. What he and his family have endured has been nothing short of a living nightmare, one they did not deserve. Throughout it all, Cain has shown courage and strength of character. He has taken responsibility for his actions and has been held accountable. The sentence handed down today reflects the complexities of the situation and acknowledges the man behind the headlines. When he is released, he will continue to lead by example, protecting, contributing, and caring for the people around him."
That's the literal only silver lining to any of this. Aside from perhaps Cain getting released early, the fact that he has to serve at all is a little ridiculous. But if there is a silver lining to this case, it is that Cain can go forward and be all of those things that his lawyer said he would be. A protective, contributing, and caring member of society who is going to hopefully advocate for awareness regarding early intervention when it comes to recognizing the signs of abuse in young children and going back to being the family man that he always has been. So it's not even really a silver lining, is it? It's just a small glimmer of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation.
And that's not only a testament from his attorney, but it's from the entire MMA community and everybody who knows Cain. The MMA community has supported this man all the way through and continue to support him because he's still locked up. But the fact that he's still locked up means it's still free Cain. And even Dana White submitted a letter to the court, as well as many other fighters have pitched in. And we have to continue supporting Cain because justice has not been served yet.
I thought that that was really good of Dana to do that. And the Weasel's right. The whole MMA community has been extremely supportive of Cain, as they should be. I don't think that there's been one opposing opinion from the MMA community that I've seen. Fighter after fighter has been posting on Twitter, free Cain. And actually, I also wanted to bring this up. This is from the Daily Mail in the UK. Luke Rockhold saying that he thinks that Donald Trump should pardon Cain. I have a lot of mixed feelings about Donald Trump for sure, but if there was ever a time to pardon someone, of course, Trump had pardoned many, many people as he entered office. If there was ever a time to grant a pardon to someone, I think that Cain Velasquez certainly deserves it. Rockhold insists Velasquez is a big teddy bear and suggests his actions were somewhat justified. Yeah, somewhat justified, I think, is exactly correct. The retired fighter also claims this case shows everything that is wrong with society. Well, there you go. If there's anything I can 100% agree on, it's absolutely that.
One thing I don't understand is, okay, taking the law into your own hands is one thing, but when the system fails you, what else can you do? Now, my opinion on this is that Harry Goulart should already been the court, right? He should already been there before Cain ever was. The fact that Cain's whole case was concluded prior is a failure from the system itself. And I do agree Cain was reckless. It's understandable, though. Most fathers would at least think the same thing, if not do it, right? There was a district attorney. I don't know if he was part of the case, but he issued a written reaction statement, and he said one man's decision to take law into his own hands left an innocent man wounded and endangered school children, teachers, and many others in our community. If you want to do justice in Santa Clara County, please apply for a badge, unquote. These are projectiles, so they can miss and hit someone completely innocent that has nothing to do with anything. Even Cain said the same thing, right? Cain said himself that he put people that had nothing to do with this in risk. Now, the fact of the matter is he didn't injure anybody else besides the stepfather. So that is the update. Amazing job to his lawyer. Hopefully Cain is able to get out sooner.
I agree with the Weasel's assessment here. I think that he's absolutely right, that there is a mishandling that has happened here as far as the way that this all went down, the fact that this person was allowed to be out walking the streets in the first place was a problem, to say the least. And Cain doing what he did is somewhat understandable. Was he right? No. You should not go around shooting recklessly, endangering the public with a weapon or with a vehicle, both of which can be deadly. But I think that based on the elements of this case, it is somewhat understandable why he did what he did. The judge in the case was almost brought to tears during the sentencing, saying it's a tragic case. This is from MMA Fighting. Judge Arthur Bocanegra was nearly brought to tears while issuing a 5-year prison sentence to ex-UFC fighter Cain Velasquez in a Santa Clara County courthouse on Monday. According to numerous reports, the judge got choked up addressing Velasquez in the courtroom after he pleaded no contest to attempted murder and other various charges related to his arrest in 2022 after going on an 11-mile high-speed chase pursuing a vehicle containing Harry Gallardi, blah, blah, blah. We know all this stuff. While prosecutors asked for a sentence of 30 years to life in prison, Bocanegra vehemently disagreed and stated that punishment comes in many ways, and one of the worst is forcing a father to not be present in his child's life. So then why did you give him the 5-year sentence, sir? I don't know if he was the one that was deciding that. I think that the judge makes that call in these kinds of cases. So why did you give him 5 years? I guess due to the potential loss of life. I don't know. I'm conflicted on that aspect of it. I guess that maybe a small jail stint perhaps makes a little bit of sense based on that. That's a conflicting portion of this. But I think that had Cain got time served and parole for a long period of time, give him 10 years probation or whatever, I think a lot of people would have been pretty okay with that. Check in with your probation officer every whatever week or month or whatever it is. Go back to being exactly who you were beforehand. I think that that would have made a lot of sense. But I do somewhat understand there being some time associated with this because of the harm to the general public. Even though, as we saw, the area doesn't seem like it's as heavily trafficked as the district attorney wants to make it out. The judge weighed numerous factors when deciding on the sentence, and while Velasquez was the offender in the attempted murder case, he also considered his family as victims due to his young son's involvement in the child molestation allegations. Yeah, you realize that, then maybe you could have done something differently. Bocanegra also noted during sentencing that Velasquez had no prior criminal record and has since expressed remorse for his actions on the fateful day in February of 2022. This is a tragic case, Bocanegra said in court. Mr. Velasquez is not a danger to public safety. This case is unique, and unlike any other case this court has presided over, the mitigating factors outweigh the aggravating factors. Then why did you give him time then if you know that he's not a danger to anybody else? Isn't that the whole thing? I guess it's you're supposed to serve time to be rehabilitated, not as a punishment. But if you know that, like, that's what they say, right? Isn't that the whole thing, is that prison is supposed to be for rehabilitation and not as a form of punishment? I've heard that before, at least. If that's what it's actually for, then he doesn't need rehabilitation. Velasquez initially spent 8 months behind bars following his arrest, with a separate judge denying his bail on numerous occasions. So how about that aspect of it? I didn't even remember that part of it. Cain has already served jail time for this. Having his bail denied on numerous occasions, why? Why exactly? Seems like Santa Clara County has a real problem with what Cain did, but not so much of a problem with what Harry Gallardi did. Perhaps California is a little bit soft when it comes to crimes against children. We all know that elsewhere in Southern California, a place called Los Angeles, where the movie industry is, they've had a pretty bad problem with that in the past. Perhaps not enough justice served in that regard either. I think the bigger takeaway from all of this is just how broken the the legal system is and how it does not serve the people that it is meant to serve. And when people take the law into their own hands, things like this can happen. Whether it's justified or not, that's a tough call. Because on the one hand, we have police and courts and judges for those things. Yet if you cannot trust the police or the court or the judges, then what are the options? The options are to do this or to sit by and live with the injustice that has been perpetrated against you. Which would you prefer? If those are your only options in this shit sandwich of a situation. So, I guess that's about it for this case. I think that the only thing that I have left to say about this situation is that I hope that Cain's remaining time behind bars is served quickly and painlessly, and that he's released as quickly as he can be. All of the time served that he already has done, paired with good behavior and whatever else is a factor that can influence him getting out sooner, I hope all of that happens. I hope that Cain is able to be reunited with his family as quickly as possible, and that he can go back to doing what he has been doing for all of his time before this, being an all-around good person, a caring and loving father, a contributing member of society, and someone who should be looked up to and respected and held in high esteem. On the other side of this case, I hope that Harry Ghilardi fries for what he did, allegedly. I hope that justice is served in that instance, but based on the lack of justice that we've seen so far, I'm not so confident that it's going to be, and that's fucked. For Yelling About Mixed Martial Arts, this is Thinker St. James. Thanks for watching.
Game.